economy a talk. So I have with me today executive producer Chris Kiritz, and we're going to have a little conversation about the MTG Arena economy. And that's what
he brought back up.
This is
Smart.
going to be a conversation. And just to frame things before we get started, we consider this the start of a conversation. This isn't an endpoint. We're not going to come in here and solve everybody's problems immediately. It's the start of a conversation. We're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about the economy, how and why it was built the way it was built. We're going to talk about pain points from you, the fans, the ones we've seen, the ones we've heard. We're going to talk a little bit about and then we're going to take your questions. So you can see down at the bottom there, we have just MTG Arena and then Q&A. We are going to take your questions in chat. If you put questions in chat now, we do have someone who's kind of gathering them, so we'll see them, but you're also more likely to get them on the air if you put them in when we get to that Q&A section. And then we're going to answer as many of those questions as we can before the hour is up. I really appreciate all of you being here, and I really appreciate Chris Kiritz being here.
Thanks.
Yeah, so Chris is, as I said, the executive producer for MTG Arena, so he's the man with all the answers. Every single answer. most of the answers.
Right under the bus, Chet.
Yeah, so we've got Chris in the hot seat today. So I'm going to start off asking a bunch of questions. Some we've seen in the community, some we're kind of setting him up to talk about some stuff. So stick with us. We're just going to get started. No more to do. You don't want to hear me talk. You want to hear Chris talk. So real quick, so we're talking today about the economy. So just so we're all on the same page. First of all, what do we mean when we're talking about the economy?
Sure. So when we talk about the economy, I want to go back one step further and talk a little bit about what Arena is designed to do, right? And our vision for Arena is fun, fast, magic for everyone, anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at that, that includes players who may be less familiar with Magic, people who are just starting out on digital, but also includes veterans and people who've been playing Magic for almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. So it's a balancing act between all types of players. In addition, you have constructed players and limited players, and we're trying to present something that is fast and fun for a wide range of players. Mm-hmm. With that philosophy, we knew that we were going to also have to make some concessions. And so some of the things that we know that Arena is not is when we talk about it is authentic Magic, but it's not necessarily going to be a simulation of Magic all the time. Either the gameplay or some of the other trappings around Magic in general and how you collect cards or, mm-hmm. or trading and all that stuff. We knew those were things we were going to do up front that were going to be slightly different. Mm-hmm. But the goal again is fast, fun, and accessible.
Okay.
So,
accessible.
With that in mind, when we talk about the economy itself, the economy is actually all of the ways that players interact with the game. Collecting and spending cards and resources, whether it's ICRs or gold or gem, and we try to create paths for all of the different player types as best we can.
Okay. So there's a pretty broad definition of economy here, where it's every way essentially that players interact with the game and see bits move around and get to do more things. Okay.
Yep.
So when we built Arena and built it from the ground up a few years back, when the economy was built, what was it structured around?
Turn your volume up. I can turn me down slightly,
so
but
I've
got their volume all the way
again
cranked. He's just much quieter
really
than Blake.
About current Magic, mm-hmm. right? Front list, what we call front list, which is current releases, standard play, and in that, what we really wanted to focus on is if you are coming to Arena, how do you build a deck and get to a couple decks and get to what you want to play sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. And so the primary economy is built around this idea of building and iterating on a deck or a few decks at a time, slowly over the course of using the in-game systems, whether it's the weekly quests or the daily wins or purchasing packs, whatever it is. You can kind of take your own pace to build the deck. If you want to accelerate it, obviously you can spend a little bit more up front, mm-hmm. But if you don't want to spend, you can earn everything in game just by playing over time. Mm-hmm. And again, that was in the service of somebody who was like, oh, I'm going to have decks to play with out of the gate. We provide a bunch of starter decks that we expect to be kind of the building blocks.
Your starter decks are worthless, and there is no starter deck queue to play those starter decks in. Their existing starter decks are unacceptable.
One of the things that when we look at if that's the target, kind of where are some of the areas where we maybe knowingly didn't target, and those kinds of areas are things like I am a person who wants to collect a full set. This economy doesn't support that particularly well. We know that, and it's a thing that we want to work on.
Really?
We'll talk a little bit about some of the things we're talking about later.
So they're aware that you can't actually collect without spending money. That's good to know.
Because again, this is built.
I'm surprised they admitted that.
And play involves primarily decks. Now we know that if you have a robust collection, that you can build more decks. That's one of the reasons why collecting cards is a core piece of the economy, and one of the reasons, when people talk about the idea of dusting, right, destroying some cards to build other cards, we never factored that in because we wanted players to build collections, because we think collections are valuable and are the way you get to more variety over time.
Okay.
So now we know that, again, in building this economy, we know that being able to trade those resources and focus on the things you want is very important. So that's where the wildcard system comes from, right? And the wildcard system is built to effectively be that dusting system, but rather than tying it to destroying cards and destroying your collection, we tie it to something that's inherently part of Magic and inherently supposed to be fun, which is opening boosters, right? So
that's the progress bar at the top.
Right. Now, obviously, if you've been around for a long time, you know that progress bar didn't always exist. And it was a thing that we added as we got feedback from players. And originally wildcards were completely random, and you didn't know when you're going to get your next one outside of this broad window of bad luck protection.
Yeah.
So one of the things was let's make this very explicit. Let's make it very upfront. You know that every time you open 6 boosters, you're going to get a wild card, which is any one card that you need, any one rare card that you need for your deck. And then the 6th time you do that, you'll get any one mythic that you need for that deck. That is built off of the idea of opening the pack is the way that you're getting the dust, the things that you would have destroyed. We're just giving you that up front.
Okay.
So.
All right. So you started to touch on it. You mentioned that completing a collection is not, this economy is not especially well suited for that.
Correct.
And that's a pain point. So what are some of the other pain points?
I'm sorry this is lagging. It's their stream. I'm going to turn the quality down again. We're down to 360.
A lot of decks or try a lot of things that sometimes there can be some hurdles for you. Again, the way it's built is you have to have a pretty robust collection to be able to bounce around like that.
Sure.
We know that is a pain point and can be problematic. We know
my encodings dropped 0 frames and my internet is fine, so this is their problem.
If you are trying to build your collection, limited is a really good way to do that, because as part of the game experience, you're opening a bunch of cards and building your collection. You're also playing and earning prizes. If you don't like limited, you don't have that option to you.
Right.
Correct.
And so that there's a pain point there, which is how do I build a collection as a
sucks for constructed players.
When this kind of viable path is
it's awful for constructed players.
Something that I enjoy.
Okay.
So those are kind of a couple of the big ones that we know about. And
spend wild cards.
So one of the, when you go back to trying things out, wild cards are a valuable commodity in this economy, right? You want to make sure that you're spending them because they are, a little bit slower to come by compared to you have to open, a handful of packs and earn them, and then you don't want to make sure that you're spending them on the right things. And so we do see a little bit of
essentially just choking on 160p as well.
Anxiety and wildcard spend, so people will hold on to them until they know exactly what they want to build, diving into some of the things that they want to do. So that is another point we're aware of and we'll talk about solutions for as we move along.
Okay. Well, let's dive into some of those solutions right now. So,
sure.
I know your team has to think kind of what's happening in the next build, and then what can we work towards long term. So why don't we first start with some of
I watch a lot of Twitch chat. This isn't a problem on any other Twitch stream.
So we'll tackle set completion.
Okay.
Right. So In set completion, we know that as you get closer, it's going to be easier to get, more of the rares, and then mythics become a problem over time. And the way we have duplicate protection in the packs is that as you get closer to rare complete, opening boosters just feels worse because you're really just looking for the mythics in there, and if you have all the rares, you're getting the duplicate protection gems instead. So one of the things that we're going to be introducing here shortly, and I believe it's, I don't have the exact timeline, but it's, around SNC, maybe sooner, is we're going to sell a pack that is mythic guaranteed.
Okay.
So when you buy this pack, it'll cost 1,300 gold.
Okay.
There will be a gem bundle that you can get like 10 of them for gems instead. But the baseline is 1,300 gold. When you open that, the rare or mythic slot will be either a wild card, a rare or mythic wild card, or it will be a mythic from that set.
Okay.
And we're going to start that with Neo, and then we'll see how that goes. And if it's something that people are super interested in and is working the way we hope it works, then we'll continue to have those as part of the set offer moving forward.
Okay.
I'm surprised I'm not surprised they're adding that, because this is something that will be very beneficial for their large spending players like myself.
That's one of the things we're looking at.
This is a new feature for people that spend money.
You have somebody who's looking to build a deck quickly. We know that there is kind of an inefficiency sometimes in buying a bunch of boosters and then opening them all to get the wild cards you need, right?
You talked earlier about how the economy was built around kind of slowly progressing your deck and building it, and you're building it and your collection over time. But yeah, you're referring to someone who wants to day one play the latest deck.
I am a veteran. I know exactly what I want to build. I don't want to go buy packs and try and buy the right assortment of packs from a bunch of different sets to kind of maximize my chances to get the rares while trying to get wild cards.
This is
so
good. Go on.
We're going to offer a wild card bundle that you can just buy in the store.
Okay, so direct purchase.
Direct purchase. It'll be
I'm almost there. Keep going.
And 4 mythic rare wild.
Keep going.
Wild cards. The theory is that again, if you're pretty good along the way to having a deck that you like, that's you think is going to be pretty good, you just want to just finish it off right there, you can buy this from the store. It's $49.99. Gives you everything you need to just kind of finish your deck, or if you wanted to kickstart a deck, you'll be able to do that.
Wait, how many wild cards he lagged? He said $50.
It's going to be RMT only, so real money only.
Okay.
The
$50 for how much?
Again, it's primarily a Kickstarter and primarily getting around the inefficiency of opening a bunch of packs. I talked earlier about we think collections are
12 rares and 4 mythics for $50.
Number of wild cards and rares.
Oof.
You will have a bigger collection, but it's more inefficient, and you will. The bundle gives you slightly better amount of rares and wild cards than you would get just by opening those 50 packs. But you're losing out on maybe some of the randomness that might help build your collection. So it's a trade-off that players get to make on how they want to interact with the system.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to jump. We're going to get to medium and long-term stuff in a second. I'm going to jump to a question that I'm sure we're seeing a bunch in chat right now, and I know we've seen before. So you're talking about collections being important, and also being able to jump around being important. So why is dusting not on the menu for Arena?
Partly for the reason I talked about earlier, which is we account for that when you open packs. So we built the system to reward the fun of opening packs, and then you build towards your wild cards. The reason we don't do dusting is, again, it was a decision we made early on where what we wanted to prevent is the looking through your collection, trying to decide what you want to destroy. And for some, and I don't want to, for some people, that's going to be an easy decision. They know exactly what they want, and they'll be able to destroy something. But for a lot of our players, that's actually a hard decision. It's going to be going to Reddit and here's my collection. What should I destroy? Right. What is the best thing? How do I make sure I don't make a mistake? And with Magic, you know that whenever a new set releases, everything can change. You can destroy cards that, you know.
It's actually just a slideshow. I literally don't have this problem with any other streams.
Where you get a fraction of a card up front.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Each pack is very much a tick towards your next wild card. You know, the top tier players who know exactly what they want. Hopefully, a robust collection. So getting to their next deck is.
Let me open a new tab. I don't know. My computer is not hitting. I'm not hitting any encoding problems. I watch Twitch all the time and never have this problem. I watch Twitch while OBS is running and going to and don't have this problem.
That's where some of the pain is. And that's where, again, we hope that something like, a wildcard bundle will just.
This is so fucking annoying.
To the things you all are thinking for kind of
It's literally doing it in 160p as well, right?
Spend anxiety, the ability, difficulty in dabbling and exploring, difficulty completing a collection, those sorts of things, and
I mean, I watch every other stream on low latency mode without issues. Try opening the Twitch app, chat. I don't have a Twitch app installed because literally every other stream works fine through my fucking web browser.
So I think one of the things we talked about is if you're a limited player, you have a very real event path that gets you a bunch of cards. You open the cards, you have prizes that give you gems and boosters. Those boosters that you get, you can open in again, accelerate your wild cards, and all of those things. Build a collection. Constructed events don't do the same thing, right? They're very
they get gold and ICRs.
Gold and ICRs, you get a handful of ICRs, and that doesn't do anything to, like the ICRs you get aren't tied to a specific set. They're just the format, so standard. As a whole, so you don't know which boosters are going to come from. They don't do anything to progress wildcard tracks, so you're not getting any benefit there. And it's just a light touch on your collection. So one of the things we're doing here soon, probably April, May timeframe, is we're going to update some of the constructed events to be more similar to what we do with draft. You'll get gems, you'll get boosters as part of doing well. We'll have slightly different structures for best of 1 and best of 3. But the hope there is that by changing what the rewards look like and how you're playing, you're going to have more meaningful progress for collection for opting into a constructed event than you might currently have. Right. So that's one of the things that's coming. The other one I think we've talked about a little bit, and again, this goes kind of slightly off topic, but we've heard, when we talk about, I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about Alchemy, right?
Yes. We have a whole Alchemy section.
We're whole Alchemy section. Yeah. So maybe this is best saved there. So I'll skip that one. We'll talk about that one a little bit later.
Okay.
But one of the other things is then when we look at, this is more mid to long term. When we look at one of the concerns is when we look at people who don't know what to spend their wild cards on or are afraid to spend the wild cards on decks, for decks that they haven't tested yet and they don't know if they're any good. We really want to provide a way for people to test decks, to experiment with things they might not be able to build yet in a way that is readily accessible. We do this a little bit from time to time with what we call the all access events.
Sure.
Right, where you can join an event, you can build whatever you want. We've done it for Historic, we've done it for, I think, Alchemy and Standard. We do it on and off. We want something along those lines in a way that isn't just a point in time event, but is part of a process, like you can go test event. Now, whether that's against, Sparky and you're just, to use a term that maybe not everyone knows, gold fishing, right? Just trying to see how well your deck does in a short amount of time and make sure that it feels right. Or if it's, some other way for you to, we'll say, borrow cards in some form You know, we don't have the exact form that we want this to take, but this is the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Try it before you buy it kind of situation.
Correct.
That's around more often.
That's around, not just more often, but just available. Like,
Okay.
like ideally it's available just all of the time. It's part of, you know, maybe something like this is actually in your collection, right?
Maybe
When you
turning
put
off low
together a deck
latency
that you
did
have
it.
Cards for.
It doesn't
there's
work
a
on their
try it
stream
out.
for some reason.
Yeah.
And then you can play in the play queue, or you can, like I said, play against
Okay.
Sparky or something for some amount of time. And again, we don't have all the specifics, but we know that that kind of thing will help reduce some of the fear about spending wild cards. We'll make sure that the kind of reduce those regret moments.
Right.
Right. And then we talk about this with dusting. Like reducing regret is a part of our philosophy on like, we would rather have you try things and have fun and not regret the decisions that you make.
Okay. So I'm going to go, we mentioned alchemy. We said the alchemy word, and I'm sure there are a bunch of questions in chat right now related to alchemy. So we're just going to jump ahead to our section on alchemy, especially because I want to make sure that we get to, we've got a bunch of great questions being fed to me from chat, and I want to make sure we get to all of those. Okay, so let's start with this. So we introduced alchemy last December.
Yep.
When we were introducing alchemy, when we were thinking about alchemy, what kind of considerations were made for the economy in that discussion, and what about when future formats are added as well?
So with alchemy specifically, because we knew it was going to have cards to acquire at a slightly different rate than the set, we had a conversation around, you know, what's the best way to distribute cards in this manner? Obviously, historic
Sell all of them for one
Anthologies have
easy
a model
price
with,
is
you
the
know, you can
easiest way
buy
to distribute them.
one of all
Booster
the
packs
cards at
aren't
once, then you
necessary
don't
if
have
you're
any
not
baffle,
drafting
you
a
just
set.
draft wild cards.
Stop
Yep.
using booster packs.
There is
They're
a
only
little
there
bit
to
of an appeal
scam
to
us.
like, oh, I can get one of everything.
Yeah.
But one of the things, again, what we talked about was there's something satisfying about opening a booster, making progress towards wild
Stop
cards,
it.
so you can open.
You don't believe that. Nothing
you know, tying into that
satisfying about
random
opening a
deal.
digital
So
booster.
that's where
Stop
we leaned
lying
into
to
alchemy
me.
boosters.
Yeah,
Now,
like
because this
that
is
is
new, we've tried a
man.
couple of different things over time. We're going to continue to experiment on
All right,
how
chat.
we,
The
allow people to.
this
acquire
isn't
those
just
cards.
his line. This is
Expand
the
the
whole
options,
PR
maybe tweak
shtick,
some
but
things,
like
or-
still,
or-
like
or
that.
change some of the offerings.
That's
You know, we've tried a bundle. We've tried some other things. We've tried some events where you can play.
There's
sample-
one, I think there's one up today that is, you can try a couple pre-made decks with
Correct.
alchemy cards in them, and then
Yeah.
and it's free.
Yep.
And the rewards are random alchemy cards.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. The previous one was again an all access style, I believe, or maybe it was build your own. I can't remember which one, but it was alchemy packs are the rewards, and that was also free. So we're still playing around with exactly what the right distribution there is. So we know that there was going to be extra things to collect. What is the right way to get them out? And how do we make people excited about?
Okay, so you're
The
still
release.
exploring
Yeah.
like kind of what the right touch is on
Yep.
that with every alchemy.
Yeah, but we did, and doesn't mean we won't change, but we were committed again to the benefits of what a booster does and how it, again, can reward you with wild cards and that kind of a thing.
All right.
When you talk about formats, which is slightly, I mean, Alchemy is a format, but also has a product. When you talk about
Right.
formats in general, again, we know how our economy works, and we know that depending on the format, there may be different pain points. Like, so when you talk about historic,
Yep.
you know, historic is all of the sets. If you've been around from the beginning, it's going to be, and played pretty regularly, you're going to have a pretty reasonable historic collection. We've already gone through a couple of rotations. You've got a bunch of cards. But we know that, you know, historic itself is harder to get into. Wasn't front list part of the economy.
Right.
We have work to do there,
Okay.
in some regard, but we also know that it's just like a modern or like, you know, any of the non-rotating formats. It just has a higher barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Right. So as a new player, again, we expect most new players to be in standard or alchemy, something that's more front list, gets their feet under them, start building their collection,
Yeah.
and then eventually pivot to an alchemy or to a historic when it's right for them. We know that just jumping into historic will be hard. Now, a wild card bundle will help, again, because it does one of the key things, which is you're going to get 12 rares.
$50
and you can,
for 12 rares and
you can
4
opt for
mythics
historic or
does not
standard
help
or whatever it is that
anyone.
you want,
It is a
you can just stack
giant
those. So
middle
Your
finger.
ability to get to a deck will be faster up front, you know, if you want to take that route.
Okay.
And then I think I think this is a good place to mention this other thing. You know, one of the other things, when we launched Alchemy, we had the intent again there is we want something that is meets the needs of digital players.
Sure.
Right. And so when we launched that, we talked about we're going to have live formats, which are our digital first formats, Alchemy and Historic, and we're going to have tabletop or print formats that more closely match tabletop.
Yeah.
When we launched that, we have 3 of the quadrants.
Yeah.
We have Standard, which matches tabletop. We have Alchemy, which is your very fast digital live format. We have Historic, which takes everything that's printed, or almost everything that's ever been printed on Arena, and is again a live format. It has rebalances and takes the Alchemy card changes. But what we don't have is a non-rotating print format.
Right, which actually addresses the question I just got fed in chat from Mountain Goat GG. Is there anything in the pipe to bring an eternal format that isn't tied to Alchemy?
There is.
Okay.
And it's coming relatively soon.
Yeah.
We don't have the name or the
Relatively
exact
soon.
definition, but you've seen some previews if you've been playing. We've run a couple different events. We'll look at the data and
Relatively
make sure
soon.
We're picking the right one, but we will have here in the next month or two a non-rotating format that you can play with tabletop print cards.
Yep.
No digital only cards.
Month or
no,
two.
Digital rebalances. It will just be printed or not printed.
Okay.
And it will be, it is a, we talked about Pioneer, and I'm sure this is also in the question.
That was actually my next, it's along the lines of my next question. So continue on Pioneer.
Right. This will be kind of that bridge to what we hope to get to Pioneer at some point. If I'm going to guess, your question is something along the lines of why we didn't do Pioneer.
Yes, it's the why Alchemy instead of Pioneer question that we've seen a lot,
Yeah, so why Alchemy instead of Pioneer? And this goes back to why we're going to launch the tabletop format. At the time we launched Alchemy, Historic had started to do a lot of the things that we would have wanted out of Pioneer. A non-rotating format for players to play the cards that they've collected over time. And Historic was filling that niche very well at the time. It had grown continually since, and actually continues to grow as a very popular format. And so the more pressing need at the time.
Do not insult the people talking on my screen. You'll be removed from my chat for 10 minutes. We have this
non-rotating format, but what we don't have is something for digital players who want more regular balances, more regular iterations on what's popular at the speed that makes sense for a game that has lots of play. Right. One of the things we're trying to address is that feeling of, I'm running into the same kinds of decks for weeks to months. Right, which can happen. And so we wanted to be able to have something that was much more flexible, that we could pivot in real time or close to real time. And right now the cadence we have is every 2 or 3 weeks is probably, or every 3 weeks is roughly our kind of like, here's a thing, here's a rebalance, or here's an Alchemy drop, or here's something else. Again, Historic was filling that non-rotating format well, but with the addition of digital, with the addition of the live portion of that, we realized pretty quickly, thank you, everybody, that there was still a need for a non-rotating format that was just print cards. So you can just use the cards that you have in your, that you've seen in your tabletop collections, and you don't have to worry about.
Well, there's something to be said for the mental space too of just keeping track of. So that will be coming very soon. All right. I'm going to run through a couple more of my pre-done questions, and then we're going to get to Q&A because there's a bunch of good questions that we've got here. Let's see. How about let's stick with Alchemy for a little bit. Can we have more Alchemy-focused draft and sealed events to help build collections? Is that a possibility?
So we knew that when we talk about adding cards, we knew that the amount of cards would be something we have to manage very closely. The first Alchemy drop was kind of a double drop because Mid and Vow was kind of a double set, so we tied into that. And to have enough to launch the format with.
Sure.
Our regular drops are always going to be right in that 30 card range, and it's really hard to have anything with that few cards have some sort of limited experience to go along with that. when we had settled on boosters, we had talked about, all right, is there an opportunity to include Alchemy in a draft of some sort?
Yeah.
And there still is an opportunity, but it wouldn't be a regular thing. It would be a sometimes thing if we went down that route.
Sure.
One of the things we wanted to be very cautious of.
This guy is a producer for Magic Arena, so he's higher up.
You know, a draft format as close to the tabletop version is something that we value very highly. Again, it's an expectations thing. So what we want to be cautious of, if we do something like this where, oh, maybe now there's a mix of Alchemy boosters and you know, it's like for Neo, because Neo's out, right? Neo Alchemy and regular Neo boosters in a draft, that people who join that know what they're getting into. We don't want to surprise people.
Sure.
Right. So I'm not saying never, and we talked about the possibility, but we erred on the side of keeping draft authentic.
Okay.
Maybe in the future we'll do something again as we explore different ways to distribute cards. Maybe that is an option that we pursue.
Okay. All right. I do have more questions that I had written down before the show, but you all have put so many great questions in chat that my team is sharing with me. So we are going to start tackling some of those. They have been feeding them to me as the show's been going on. So some of these we've answered, but let's try. That was answered. Okay, so the wild card bundle.
Yeah.
$50, 12 rares, 4 mythics. The question from unpronounceable username. How was that $50 price tag for the wild card bundle determined?
It was based off of the normal acquisition rate of wild cards by opening packs.
Okay.
Is the short answer.
Okay.
Right. So the rate at which you open packs and build collections, and then, like I said, if you were to open all of your packs, you would the same equivalent in packs. You'd end up with probably a couple fewer rare wild cards, but a lot more just cards in general.
Okay. Next question from Winkelseer. I should stop trying to pronounce these names. It's just not going to go well. So this is a question we've seen come up a few times. I'll read it and then I'll clarify a little bit for people who don't quite follow it. The question is, it feels really bad when we get our 8th plus copy of the same rare from 2 different sets with the exact same art even. This was an issue, I think, with Jumpstart particularly.
And it happens whenever we reprint.
Yeah. It says, why not auto-dust those for us?
The short answer is technology.
Okay.
But this is a nice thing. So I believe we have announced, and if we haven't, I'm going to preview it now.
Okay.
The ability to like set your favorite land. And
we haven't announced that. So continue.
Great. So that's coming. And some of the tech that was required to do that, to kind of clean up some, maybe some assumptions that were made a while ago, and like, oh, we're going to have this issue where we're going to we don't want you to have to sort through, scroll through every land. Just set a favorite, and that'll be your default. That tech also will help us solve this other problem.
Okay.
Now we don't have a solution right now.
Okay.
But that helps us go, all right, how do we solve for when there is a reprint? And people don't need 12 copies of Duress,
right,
to be like one of the more common examples.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Both common. Yeah.
No, that's dumb. But so we know that's a problem. Reprinted rare lands are another one of those that those come back every so often.
Yeah.
Right. How do we solve for that?
Yeah.
This tech lets us start solving for that. I don't know exactly what the solution will be, but it is more possible now than it was, a month ago.
Okay.
So, but we are aware of it, and we will.
Well, at least they admitted that their software is just bad / unfinished / unpolished, and not that they don't want to do it.
Inferno Storm 1,
I assumed was the case.
Says, okay, no dusting, but what about converting common and uncommon wild cards for a rare mythic? So not dusting, but like trading up. I know a lot of people end up with a lot of common, a lot of uncommon wild cards. That is the question, yeah.
So, the lot of common and uncommon wild cards is part of how we design the economy.
Okay.
One of again, when we talk about
ratios are currently bad.
We wanted to prevent
hundreds extra. Someone like me even has hundreds of extra rare wild cards
because they didn't have uncommons. So we over-index on common and uncommon common and uncommon wildcards in the distribution of wildcards.
Okay.
Which is why we haven't even talked about that as a possibility.
Okay.
If we were going to do that, we would have to change a big
This
chunk
is
of
how
the-
we designed it. Yes, that's the
So, and
problem.
it's just, again, we aren't talking about that right now.
Sure. All right, from Scott is Lost. Will mythic packs, the packs that only come with a mythic rather than a rare, be duplicate protected?
Yes.
That's part one. Okay, great. If so, can mythic packs replace mythic ICRs on future mastery passes?
Maybe. There's no technological reason why we can't do that.
Okay.
So we would have to talk to the product team, but yeah, I won't say yes, we're just going to do that.
Yeah, but
It is definitely a possibility.
Okay. All right. Peregrine 23 wrote, the economy is especially harsh to newer players because most rewards are tied to wins. Are there any plans to reward players more for playing even if they don't win?
Two parts. If you're playing in events, yes, you have more pressure to win.
Yes.
Agreed. And then the daily win bonus is also a portion of that. The rotating quests are not built around that, and very specifically, again, we didn't want everything to be based on wins. That said, we also know that there is an opportunity, and again, I can't have promise, but when we talk about mid to long-term types of things we're talking about, there is an opportunity to reward additional behaviors of playing that provide, instead of wins, it'll be like partial wins. Like, oh, did you do a thing or play a type of card or whatever? Can we reward you for some of those behaviors? And that is something we've been talking about. What does that look like to reduce, like winning gets you there faster, but playing continues to make progress.
Sure.
That's the style of thing that we would be looking at to replace or to help those newer players who are starting out. And you know, the premise is absolutely correct. Like if you're just learning how to play Magic, you are learning so many things, and winning is going to be harder as you learn cards and interface and all of the other things. So we are aware, and it is the kind of thing that we want to address down the road.
Okay. All right, next question from Marvoleaf. These usernames are getting easier. All right, what about reimbursements for nerfed cards, so cards that are rebalanced to be less powerful in Historic? Can we get our wild cards back? Before you launch into that, I'm gonna be corporate chill for a sec. It is worth pointing out that there were a bunch of nerfed cards, rebalanced cards, and it was Alchemy, so a little different, but that did show up in the event, the championship this past weekend. So they do still get played, but it's still, you know, a reasonable question. This card that I had, that I, you know, exchanged a wild card for, maybe no longer does what I needed to do. So is there any discussion in that area?
That one's slightly more complicated. In the goal, again, of having a fast digital format was for us to be able to make changes quickly.
Yeah.
Both positive and negative. We've had, you know, some of the rebalances were very heavily skewed towards just cards got better. A couple of them got worse.
The whole dungeon
Correct.
deck,
Like,
yeah.
hey, let's find cards that we think have interesting potential, but may have missed the mark.
Yep.
And make them better. And we saw with Venture, we saw that, and it actually did well in the set championship. Right?
Yep.
In order to maintain that, we needed to be able to free designers to make changes without, like, what's the cost?
Right.
Right. It is a thing that we have to be aware of. So that's part of that equation on why as we launch, we don't do refunds. Now, I'm not saying that won't change over time. We're still, again, learning as we go in a lot of these things. Like outside of, you know, ancient history long ago, digital only cards are new.
Yeah.
And how they interact with the ecosystem are new. The philosophy around all changes that we make is, you know, when we're talking rebalance, we're trying to find the right level of power so the card is still playable, but doesn't create a situation where it's the only card you should play.
Okay.
Right? And so when you look at some of the changes, and particularly, like, we do balance primarily for Alchemy, and some of those changes will hit Historic over time.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you're rebalancing a card that doesn't see any Historic play, and it still doesn't see any Historic play, and nobody cares about those particularly, right? But the kinds of ones we've seen are ones where the balance is more felt in historic than in alchemy, and how do we manage those? So there's a couple things. Again, we'll look at the play rate, how they perform in decks. We have a lot of data on, what is the win rate of decks that include these cards, and did it go up or down? From the data side, we've been pretty happy with the changes we've made. Most of the time, I'm not going to say every time because it's not always going to be true, but most of the time when we've made a change like that, the win rates stay pretty even with the balance card and the change card. A lot of what sometimes will happen, it may go down in how often it's played a little bit, as people find alternatives that just weren't viable at the time. But now you have a conversation or a consideration to make. Do I want this ability or benefit or this one? And that's where some of the interesting choices get made. When we're talking about historic specifically, we're also talking about what's the long-term plan. If I'm balancing something for a rotating format, what happens when those cards rotate? Do they just go back to normal? It's very likely that that's kind of something we will pursue. We haven't gotten to that point yet, so we don't know for sure. But that is on our mind too. Is like, it's very easy for us to be like, oh, it is rotated out. It's a historic only card. Great, full power. Go have at it. In the short term, between now and then, is there a feel bad to some degree? Absolutely. We understand that that's part of it. But what we hope happens in some of that is that the format.
It's trivial to change cards, he just said, chat. Unban Winota.
That kind of balances out.
Nerfer. Make her look at 4 or 5 cards. Give me my gal back.
On it and see what changes can we make or what changes do we need to make, and then start rolling those out as well.
Hot takes, Derek. Aspirant's still not playable in historic if they unnerf it.
Okay, that's username so far. Turtle Power MTG.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Will constructed events either impact rank or have some other meaningful organized play path?
The answer is yes, and we're not ready to talk about it.
We're not. Probably next month.
He said yes, but not yet. That actually surprises me. The smile on Blake's face was fucking priceless there. That was great.
Play announcement later this month on the 31st on this show. We'll have Billy Jensen. I'm just doing a plug for my own show in the middle of this interview.
And while we won't have all of the details for digital at that time, digital is a part of those, and we will announce those over time.
Yes.
He said constructed events are going to feed into larger organized play stuff.
It's all happening. Okay, not a question, but
constructed events are going to feed into larger organized play.
Difficult. Anyway,
that's big.
Please sell the alchemy cards as a bundle.
Organized.
One vote for that.
Organized play announcement on the 31st. 2 weeks, Chad.
Paige Lazarus asks, in terms of trying before you buy, are there any plans to enable deck sharing between friends for using direct challenge to test cards you don't own?
Are there plans? Definitely a feature that we've talked about and we know the value of.
Okay.
Historically, over the long history of Magic, the best way for players to learn is to play with their friends.
Yes.
That is something that we are very much aware of and have talked about. When is just a different conversation. But yes, that kind of thing is something we're very interested in. We think that's very powerful, and we would like to get there at some point.
Okay. The man with the cat asks, will we get more historic anthologies?
Yes.
Great. I don't know that you're going to know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway.
I can make up answers.
Is there a code for free packs for the new Alchemy release? If so, what is it?
The answer is yes, but I don't know which one.
Don't know what it is offhand. Maybe one of our community managers will put it in chat. I don't know. It's me looking at the community managers in the camera. Let's see. We already answered the Eternal format that isn't tied to Alchemy. Okay, we'll get back to a question about some of the philosophy. So Adam YMHMI asks, beyond drafting, why does your company think opening packs is such a big part of the experience of playing Magic? So I'll actually talk to that first part of that question. Is that to affirm, yes, our company does think opening packs is a big part of the experience. That's why we've introduced things like set boosters, for example, which we explicitly say are meant to be open rather than drafted. But now talk about that from the digital side.
It's very similar. It's, again, when we talk about authentic Magic, it's part of the Magic experience. Like, the possibilities of opening a booster is something that we wanted to continue. And it's part of, when we look at the types of things we want in Arena, it's very much like, oh, the opening of a pack, it should be an exciting and fun experience. Now, again, every player has their own spectrum of wants and needs. It's not everybody is going to be, super excited by that. But we think that that process and that powerful has worked for Magic for 30 years, and it's an important part of Magic.
Sure. If you, I'm not going to try to pronounce this username, but if you want Alchemy to be faster, why don't you rebalance and ban cards faster?
Rebalance and ban cards. So the hope in Alchemy is never ban cards, only rebalance. And rebalances are a combination of data and then effort to deliver. So we have to see some of the results and some of the things that we want to balance before we can balance them. And then any changes we make to cards are still coding changes that have to be built, tested, deployed. And so about every 3 weeks is a cadence that we're relatively comfortable with. And when you look at 3 or 4 weeks is roughly, right? That's the cadence we've tried to establish. We've gotten pretty close to that. It's going to shift time to time depending on what releases are coming out and what other things are going on. But that's roughly where we want to be. We do also try to manage between major events, right? Trying not to necessarily disrupt something. Now we're going to miss sometimes. Sometimes we're going to make a change that's very close to an event. And honestly, that's going to be an opportunity where we learn and grow and try and figure out, right, what is the right cadence? Is it right before an event is really exciting because people get to brew, or are people sad because they were testing for one thing and now they have to test for another? And so that's, as you know as well as anybody, that's a balancing act that we try and manage. So we may shift something a week or two, depending on that. It's one of the reasons why Alchemy is releasing after the set championship. We didn't want to interrupt that.
It released today.
It did. It is available today.
There you go. There's your plug, everyone.
So when you get your code, community managers, you will use it right away.
Okay. Let's see. From CrimeNet. Is the normal acquisition rate of wild cards something that is open to change?
If you're talking about the rate at which we currently distribute wildcards, is it open to change? Yes. Do we plan on changing it? Right now, the answer is no.
From Six Streaming, one of the big issues in making multiple decks is the rare land requirement. Oops, my screen just moved. Has there been any thought on just giving players a set of rare land cycles that set comes out so people don't have to use wild cards on not fun cards that deck needs? And I think you can probably talk more about just like rare lands generally rather than that specific suggestion.
I don't look at the context of every deck, but we update our decks with rotation at least. This is the decks that you acquire as a new player.
The rotation renewal is
rotation renewal. So we update those at the rotation to be good for a year. And I believe that some of those will include some of those lands, so that we do it in that way, but we don't do it for every set. Like, could we? I don't know. I don't know what would look good in that world. We haven't talked about it. We know that that's a pain point, but it's also part of the set. So, certainly a decision that people make is like, do I get the lands, which are not the big fun splashy spells, but are kind of like that evergreen growth. And we know that is a pain point too, and maybe we can look at additional conversations around that, but I don't have anything specific right now.
Will ICRs ever get duplicate protection?
Will ICRs ever get duplicate protection? The answer is maybe. There's some technical challenges with how we deliver ICRs that makes duplicate protection hard. So in some spaces they are actually duplicate protected, but because it's not everywhere, we don't advertise that.
So that's another. They're not screwing you on purpose. They're screwing you because the software is a mess.
Draft sets? Not currently on our radar. Doesn't mean never. There's a lot of space available in the history.
But there's nothing currently planned.
Nothing currently planned.
Any current plans to? This is from Alpha Cream 1. Any plans to remove or improve, the vault rewards?
So let's talk about Vault. So Vault was our original swing at duplicate protection.
Sure.
Way back when.
Yeah.
And then we came up with the current version of duplicate protection and said we were going to remove the Vault.
Yeah.
And then we just didn't, because what happens in the Vault is that you open up, duplicate commons and uncommons, which happens quite a bit. You just get progress in your Vault, and eventually it shows up on your screen, and you can open it. You get some wild cards. For us, we think that that's just a nice little bonus. We don't.
Sure.
It's not an integral part of the economy anymore, but we leave it as a bonus for people who end up opening a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, again, why packs over things, like when you open packs, you do make progress towards that Vault eventually over time, and it's a nice.
Yeah, the 20/40 gems is basically the Vault replacement.
Little trick. If when a set comes out, you spend all those common and uncommon wild cards that you think are extra on new commons and uncommons before you open packs, then all of those go into the Vault.
Correct.
When you open them. Little trick.
It's a Blake pro tip.
I did not come up with that. Okay, here's an interesting question from SBS 0311. Any consideration to allowing wild cards to convert to other currency we could use for something like drafts?
We, since I've been on the team, that is not a conversation we've had.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
well, there you go. There is an idea for your brain hole.
It has not been a consideration.
Okay. Next question. Let's see. From Azriel ! Why do Brawl and Historic Brawl not have a ranking?
So, mostly
strength
from,
matchmaking.
again, when we talk about intent of what some of those formats are for. We look at Brawl and Historic Brawl as additional formats for fun, for variation, and less competitive. So we don't want competitive pressure on formats where we hope that the primary goal is fun.
Okay.
Competitive pressure just does some odd things. Now, obviously, there are going to be people who are competitive who still play those formats, so it's not immune to that.
Yep.
But if you start putting rank or rewards on those, you start, I think, compressing what is experienced.
Makes sense.
The other thing is we also have a special, we do some a different matchmaking. We'd have to change our matchmaking for those queues as well.
Yeah, because if you play those, you know who you are, Brawl players who play those decks.
Correct.
I'm one of them. Okay, I really like this question because it asks, honestly, the flip side of a lot of what we've been talking about, because a lot of what we've been talking about has been focusing on constructed players.
Yeah.
And so this question is about limited players, and maybe the idea we stuck in your ear hole is part of this. Are there any economy considerations for limited players with hundreds of spare wild cards and unopened packs? So someone who goes on Arena to play limited, the rewards they get, they're not interested in constructed.
That's a really good question. Some of it stems from we think having a collection is valuable. We know that not every player wants a collection.
Yeah.
One of the things that you would talk about, like, what are ways that you would prevent some of that, which is a phantom event or a different reward structure or whatever. But we do want to be cautious about who is playing in the formats and what the their ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
I'll say that right now, if your only goal is to chain limited and you're getting boosters, that's not necessarily going to be a thing that's super rewarding for you.
Right.
We don't have any specific plans to address that or adjust that at this time.
Okay.
But it is, again, as we think about the different types of players we have and how we meet their needs, it's certainly worth talking about.
All right. Otaku Gamer 13 asks, why don't you include pack codes in physical packs?
Why don't we do that?
Yes. So, like correction, we do include some codes in packs.
We do
but
some. We do. Primarily we do. So primarily, one of the things we like to do is we like to reward experiences.
Yep.
a lot of the times over, just raw product.
Yeah.
So when you do pre-release,
I was gonna say I opened a pre-release pack today, and yeah.
Those have codes because we have this experience, and then you go do the thing, and then you're going to experience other things. The problem with just bulk packs is that the tabletop audience is much larger than the arena audience, and so a lot of people who get those they're not useful to them.
Yeah.
So, and we just want to be careful about how we distribute things and who gets what. So
the scale is different, is what you're saying.
They don't want to give out pack codes, which will then sell for cheap on eBay and secondary markets, devaluing what people pay for packs now. Because if they put pack codes in physical booster packs, it would undercut their current $1 pack price on Arena.
Historic,
that's what he's
saying. Are you only going to do rebalances, and are there any plans to improve any historic only cards?
So historic is there will likely be bans in historic.
Okay.
There is one of our philosophies is that we want to rebalance cards that we think are rebalanceable. There are certain cards that aren't rebalanceable. You can't rebalance a lightning bolt.
Dark Ritual, Demonic
because Lightning Bolt has been rebalanced infinite times.
Yeah.
All of the versions of Lightning Bolt rebalancing have happened.
Yeah.
Or you have a card that it's so iconic that if you
Lightning Bolt.
If you rebalanced it, it just isn't that card anymore.
Yeah.
So there are a couple kinds of cards that we will just, like if something were to come up, we would just ban that card.
Yeah.
Rather than try and do the impossible.
Okay.
What was the second half of that question? There was a second half.
Any plans, so rather than making banned cards weaker, any plans to improve any historic only cards? So the rebalance, the positive rebalances we've done for Alchemy, any plans to do that for historic only?
Certainly think that there is an opportunity to do that for historic only for similar reasons.
Okay.
Which is and again, if once we get split to have that non-rotating print format, we might see that more.
Where the expectation is that it's not trickling down from Alchemy. Historic may actually get
We've limited a lot of those to either Alchemy cards or previously banned historic cards that we think we can rebalance and then unban.
Right.
As we, again, get those 4 quadrants of play, the 2 non-rotating formats, 1 for digital, 1 for print, and the 2, rotating formats, then we will probably look at more rebalances in historic.
Okay. Let's see. Real quick, I can answer this question. Is there going to be an article with these updates? There is an article going up shortly that will not only house this video, but will have a lot of this in written form that Kirit's put together. Not everything that we talked about here will be in that article because a lot of what we're doing is answering your questions and kind of talking off the cuff. So a lot of the main points are going to be in that article. The short-term stuff that we talked about that is coming soon, that is going to be in that article. But a lot of the just sort of answering your questions, not there because we just got them. Next question. Let's go. Can we get wildcard track progression from opening limited packs? So the same way you do it for when you open a booster pack separately, they're asking, could you get that track progression from opening packs by playing limited?
In theory, yes, but again, it's not a thing that we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Last question. We'll do this one. Any plans to bring back sealed tokens with the pre-release code instead of the 6 boosters?
So one of the problems with sealed tokens is that sealed just isn't currently available all of the time. So in a world, particularly in a pandemic world, where there was a lot of variance in when and how people are opening those packs, we didn't want to have somebody open something that
and then not be able to use it.
Didn't know when they were going to be able to use it. So we moved to packs because again, two components. You can use them whenever you get it. You open the packs.
This makes sense.
Yep.
Also,
That's a good.
again,
This
for
is
all
a
the
good
benefits
change.
of opening packs. Move the wild card.
Yeah. All right. that is all the time we have. I know there are more questions in chat, and you all have more questions and thoughts and everything. We are, I mentioned the community managers all huddled in a room sharing questions with me. They are listening, they're watching, they're going to be responding as they can and continuing the conversation with you. I want to thank Chris Kiritz for coming on and starting this conversation. Like I said at the top of the show, we aren't done. We'll have Kiritz back on the show, and we'll do this again sometime, in the nearish future. No, I've already promised the next economy.
Thanks,
I know.
Blake.
Damn it. All right. But I appreciate all of you tuning in. I appreciate the questions. And next week,
Thanks,
so I kind
Blake.
of announced the upcoming
Thank you,
schedule
Blake.
last
We
week,
appreciate you.
But next week, we have a monthly announcement day where we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. But most of what we're going to be talking about is Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. We'll be doing the pre-beat for that, so you'll have a couple card previews. We'll talk about some upcoming digital stuff. We may have some more digital news at that point. And then the week after that, 3/31, is our Premier Play announcement. That one will be focused on tabletop. We're going to do the digital path likely later in April. So that is it.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Okay, so what did we learn today? First things first, we learned that for exactly the Magic the Gathering official stream, I have to turn off low latency mode despite it working on my computer on literally every other Twitch stream. Sorry about the bits of chop we had at the beginning there. Second, I'm going to say that I didn't have any expectations going in, and they exceeded my lack of expectations going in. So the wild card pricing is a joke, obviously. So $50 for 12 rares and four mythics. To compare that to Runeterra, Runeterra's two most expensive cards are $1 and $3, right? So if Runeterra was going to sell you, just assume the same bundle, it would be what, $12 for four of those, and then $1 for the others. So it's twice the price of what you pay for Runeterra cards, essentially. $24. Yeah, and that's even before you consider the fact that like Runeterra is way more free to play friendly. So if you're not actually spending money on Runeterra, you're gonna get a lot of that stuff for free much faster than you get it on Magic Arena. So, but just pure dollar to dollar, no time spent, they're twice as expensive. That being said, the one really positive good thing that did come out of this for large sea creatures like myself, if you missed it, is they said they are going to be adding a 1,300 gold booster pack that will guaranteed give you a mythic or rare wild card in it. So that will actually be very good. If you've never seen my collection in Magic Arena, I have hundreds of rare wild cards, and I have a bunch of gems that are just like I'm opening booster packs trying to get copies of mythics. I'm out of mythic wild cards, and I'm just like setting money on fire. So like this change is actually going to make Magic Arena cheaper for someone like myself. I'm very aware that it doesn't help any of the tiny minnows and the people that need the help the most, but they are actually making a change that's positive for their largest sea creatures, which is good. Like it actually feels bad to buy booster packs past a certain point, and they're fixing. It's something I've talked about a lot before, that you should never have people feel bad when they spend money on your product, so it doesn't surprise me that they're addressing that. I think that's a good change overall. For those of you that haven't experienced the whale noise before, I speak fluent whale. So, anything else? The $50 wildcard pack is something. It is definitely something. Oh, we're gonna get to favorite Here we're going to get to favorite basic land types. We got a small organized play teaser. So 2 weeks from today, they're going to give us an organized play update. And they teased today that in the future, constructed events in Magic Arena are going to have a tie-in to larger organized play. So that'll be good. That's a positive change. They said, yes, that's another important one to summarize. They said within a month or two, we will get a new non-rotating format on Magic Arena that will mirror paper. They said within a month or two. They said soon. I fully expect whatever this new format is that they're having is going to be very close to Pioneer, chat. Chat, they could very easily do one historic anthology and drop a bunch of the most commonly played cards from Pioneer in it and have this new format be most of Pioneer. You have to understand, chat, that most of Magic the Gathering is awful, unplayable cards that will never see play in Pioneer, but they don't exist on Magic Arena, so they technically can't say they're close to Pioneer yet. But in reality, if you look at the cards that competitively see play in Pioneer, most of them are on Arena. With 30 cards, you could have most of the top decks from Pioneer on Arena. With 100 cards, you could probably have all of the top decks from Pioneer on Arena. So, yeah. All right, cool. I've been live for 9.5 hours, so I think I'm done. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. If you missed any of that economy stream, I'm going to send it up to my YouTube channel if you want to see my commentary over the top of it. We had some fun. We took my wallet and we shook it up in the air at a couple of points. It was a great day. Comedy was created. It went better than expected, chat. We had no expectations going in and they exceeded them. So, you know, I don't think they did enough to make people happy. I think the $50 for 16 wild cards is going to easily become a meme in the community, and there's going to be a lot of pop-offs on all sorts of social media about it. So, you know, delete Twitter, delete Facebook, delete your Reddit account. Just get rid of all of it. All of it's all bad. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, first thing, we are going to play Alchemy first thing in the morning, 8:30 a.m. I'm going to be live Central Time. We're going to play a bunch of Alchemy. Our next open is Saturday. It's going to be an Alchemy tournament. Jim Davis and Amy the Amazonian are going to be co-casting with me. Hopefully I'll see y'all around.